Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are going, well, really deep into the cold, dark depths of one of the most persistent marine mysteries of the last few decades. Okay, so picture this. It's the summer of '97. The Cold War's done, officially anyway. But there's this incredibly sophisticated network. Hydrophones, basically underwater microphones, thousands of meters down.
Listening posts, really. Leftovers from trekking submarines.
Exactly. And they're still running, but now scientists are using them, listening for whales, earthquakes, volcanoes, natural stuff.
Yeah, scientific repurposing.
This suddenly, across this huge network, we're talking over 5,000 kilometers of the South Pacific, they pick up something else, something totally off the charts, a sound. But it's so loud, so powerful, and frankly, so weird, they can't immediately figure out what it is. And the initial impression, it sounded like some kind of colossal sea creature.
The stuff of legends almost immediately.
This was the Bloop. And yeah, for years, this incredibly low rumble fueled all sorts of speculation, fantasies really, giant leviathans in the deep. Because, let's face it, most of the ocean is still unknown territory.
Still is.
So our mission today, our deep dive, is to really tell the whole story here. We're going to dig into the original NOAA reports, the sound analysis, the popular science takes that really fired up everyone's imagination. We'll track the Bloop from this spooky, unidentified noise
Spine-tingling.
to what science eventually figured out, which honestly is just as fascinating, maybe even more staggering. We want to understand the full mystery and what this sound actually told us about our planet. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and I think before we even get lost in the monster theories, it's worth just pausing on the technical achievement here, the detection itself.
Okay.
We're talking about one single acoustic event, but it was so incredibly intense that when they finally managed to triangulate where it came from, they realized it had been picked up simultaneously by sensors spread across more than 3,000 miles.
3,000 miles.
That's over 5,000 kilometers, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to even picture that kind of range for a sound.
That's not just loud, that's planetary scale.
Yeah.
Like you said, hearing a foghorn in London from New York.
Pretty much. It
Yeah.
gives you a sense of the power involved. And the system that caught it, this was the NOAA Equatorial Pacific Ocean Autonomous Hydrophone Array.
Right.
Now, its sensitivity makes sense when you know where it came from. It was built by NOAA's Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory, PMAL, but it was basically piggybacking on or augmenting parts of the old U.S. Navy SOSUS network.
SOSUS, Sound Surveillance System. The Cold War submarine trackers.
That's the one. Highly classified, super-sensitive listening posts all over the ocean floor, originally there to hear Soviet subs trying to sneak around.
So after the Cold War, that gear gets a new job.
Exactly. It got repurposed for pure science. Now it's listening for earthquakes, deep-sea volcanoes near the tectonic plate boundaries, whale songs, migration patterns, even just the general rumble and crackle of ice near the poles.
The Bloop just pops up while they're listening for volcanoes.
That's what makes it stand out so much initially. They were primarily tuned in to potential underwater volcanic activity in that region. And then this signal arrives, this weird rising frequency thing, totally anomalous.
Wow.
So yeah, we're going to trace that whole journey from that first weird recording in '97 through all the media hype, the sea monster stuff, and then land on the confirmed science. And what it tells us about the sheer power of ice, actually.
The fact it could travel so far says a lot about the ocean itself, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, let's ground this thing first. The facts. When and where?
Summer of 1997. And the triangulation put the source point at roughly 50 degrees south latitude, 100 degrees west longitude.
Okay, so translate that for us. Where is that?
Deep South Pacific, way west of the southern tip of South America. Basically out in the middle of nowhere, but significantly, it's kind of adjacent to the really cold waters coming off Antarctica.
Right, near Antarctica.
Yeah.
That location turns out to be key, obviously.
Yeah. Hugely important. But to really get why the sound was so loud and traveled so far, you got to understand the physics of the ocean there.
Okay.
These hydrophones, the PML ones, they were strategically placed to listen within what's called the SOFAR channel. Sound fixing and ranging channel.
So far, I've heard of this. It's like a natural sound pipe in the ocean.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. It's this horizontal layer of water, usually, I don't know, maybe 800 to 1,200 meters down in warmer waters, but it can be much shallower near the poles.
What makes it special?
It's the sweet spot where the speed of sound is at its absolute minimum. You've got temperature decreasing as you go down, which slows sound down, but pressure increasing, which speeds it up. The SOFAR channel is where those two factors create a minimum sound velocity zone.
Oh,
So sound waves, especially low-frequency ones that enter this channel, they get trapped, they keep getting bent or refracted back towards this minimum velocity layer. They can't easily escape up or down.
so the sound energy just gets funneled horizontally.
Exactly. It acts like a waveguide, channeling the sound across enormous distances with very little loss of energy, very little attenuation. That's the key.
Which explains how the bloop could be heard 5,000 kilometers away.
Precisely. The range was just unprecedented for something they couldn't immediately identify. It wasn't a known ship, wasn't a typical quake. That's why it's always cited as one of the loudest underwater sounds ever picked up. It's up there with major underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions in terms of raw acoustic power.
It's still kind of mind-bending. Something happens halfway across the ocean, and because of this SOFAR channel, it sounds almost like it's next door, acoustically speaking.
It really is amazing.
But how do they pinpoint the source if it's just traveling along this channel? Wouldn't it be like hearing an echo down a long pipe?
That's a really good question. And yeah, it's technically challenging. That's why you need that array of hydrophones spread out over such a huge area. It relies on triangulation. Basically, you time exactly when the sound wave arrives at each sensor. Since we know the speed of sound in the SOFAR channel is pretty stable, about 1,480 meters per second, give or take.
Right.
Tiny differences in arrival time down to milliseconds between sensors thousands of kilometers apart let you calculate where those arrival times intersect. It creates these curves, hyperbolas, that meet at the origin point.
Got it. Like GPS, but with sound underwater.
Kind of, yeah. And they also check the loudness, the amplitude at each sensor. It has to match the expected drop-off in intensity based on the calculated distance. The bloop was so strong and hit so many sensors clearly that the triangulation was solid, very verifiable, even though what made the sound was still a total mystery.
Okay, so we know where and roughly when. Let's talk about the sound itself. What were its characteristics? You said it wasn't just a bang.
No, not at all. The actual event, in real time, lasted for about a minute. 60 seconds, roughly.
A whole minute. That's a long time for a single sound event?
It is. And its defining feature, the thing that really made it unique, was this rising frequency sweep.
Meaning?
It started at a super low frequency, like a deep rumble, and then over that minute, the pitch steadily climbed upwards. It swept up the frequency scale.
Okay.
And we're talking ultra low frequency here, mostly in the infrasonic range.
Below human hearing.
Yeah, below 20 hertz, maybe even dipping under 10 hertz at the start. You wouldn't hear it with your ears if you were nearby. It's more like a massive pressure wave. You might feel it, like deep bass vibrating your chest, but it's not audible in the normal sense. The hydrophones pick up that pressure wave.
So that famous bloop sound people have heard online.
Yeah.
That's because they had to speed it up just to analyze it.
Exactly right. Standard practice for analyzing these long, low-frequency events was to compress the recording, speed it up. In this case, they sped it up 16 times. That compression is what turned that minute-long infrasonic rumble into that short, audible, almost chirp-like bloop.
Which, as we'll see, really influenced how people interpreted it.
Massively. The raw data showed this sustained, low, rumbling energy release. But when you compare that to known biological sounds...
Like whales.
Yeah. Even the biggest blue whales, the loudest animals we know of, their calls peak around, say, 188 decibels underwater. The bloop's estimated source level was way, way higher. It needed vastly more acoustic power than any known animal could realistically generate, especially not in that sustained 1-minute rising sweep pattern. It just didn't fit anything they knew.
Okay, so the stage is set. A colossal, weird sound from the deep.
Oh.
Right, so this is where it really takes off. They've got the data. It's super powerful, travels across oceans, lasts a full minute, has this weird rising pitch, but they have no idea what it is. You can imagine the confusion, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that nickname, the bloop, it stuck precisely because of that sped-up 16x version. That little audible chirp sounded, well, weirdly organic, almost alive.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like an earthquake or a bomb.
No. And the scientists, people like Christopher Fox at NOAA, who first analyzed it, they went through the checklist, the process of elimination.
Okay, so what did they rule out first?
Well, man-made sources. Could it be a secret sub, some kind of military test, a giant ship's propeller? Nope. The acoustic signature was all wrong. Known human tech makes different kinds of sounds, pings, engine noise, broadband bursts from sonar. Maybe not this sustained ultra-low sweep.
Okay, so not human. What about geology? An underwater earthquake? A volcano finally blowing its top down there.
That was a strong possibility initially, especially since they were listening for volcanic activity. But again, the signature didn't match. Earthquakes, underwater eruptions, they tend to produce sharp, sudden bursts of energy across a wide range of frequencies, like a crack or a boom. Very broad band.
Not a slow, minute-long rise in pitch.
Exactly. The bloop was too long, too specific in its frequency structure, too. Tonal, almost, even though it was infrasonic. It just didn't look like typical seismic or volcanic noise.
If it's not human and it's not typical geology, the mind immediately jumps, doesn't it?
It jumps straight into that huge, terrifying gap in our knowledge. The deep ocean. You have to remember, even now, but especially in '97, we'd explored less than 5% of the seabed. It's the largest habitat on Earth, and mostly a complete mystery. The idea of something enormous, something new, lurking down there in the crushing dark. You couldn't just dismiss it instantly.
And the sound itself seemed to point that way.
That rising frequency sweep was the hook for the biological idea. Why? Because lots of animals, especially large whales, use complex calls with changing frequencies. Think of whale songs. They go up, they go down, they modulate.
Right.
The bloop structure superficially resembled that kind of frequency modulation, even though, and this is the crucial part, the power level was exponentially higher than any known whale call.
So the question became, could it be some unknown biological source?
Oh.
A new whale species? Or something else entirely?
That's where the speculation exploded, and it led right into cryptozoology, the search for hidden or unknown animals. The sea monster hypothesis was born.
And given the sheer loudness, detected 5,000 kilometers away, what kind of creature would it have to be?
Colossal. Just unbelievably massive. Or, alternatively, possessing some incredibly efficient unknown way of making sound. Some rough calculations started floating around, suggesting it would need to be significantly larger than even a blue whale.
Which is already the biggest animal ever known to exist. 30 meters long, 150 tons.
Yeah, so imagine something bigger than that, or something with biological sonar or vocal organs unlike anything we've ever conceived of.
Mm-hmm.
The media, naturally, grabbed onto the bigger than a blue whale angle. Giant squid were ruled out. They're big, but they don't make loud, low-frequency sounds like this. So imagination ran wild. Some kind of ancient, undiscovered megafauna.
And then the Lovecraft thing happened.
Ah, yes, the Lovecraft connection. This just poured gasoline on the fire, culturally speaking.
How did that come about?
Just pure coincidence, but a really spooky one. Fans of H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer who invented Cthulhu and all that cosmic dread,
Right.
They noticed the coordinates NOAA gave for the bloop's source, 50 south, 100 west. Well, that location is, relatively speaking, in the same vast empty quadrant of the South Pacific where Lovecraft placed his fictional sunken city of Arlaia.
Where Cthulhu is supposedly sleeping or dreaming.
Dead but dreaming, yeah. The coordinates aren't exact. Arlaia is supposedly a bit further south and west, but it was close enough, maybe a couple thousand kilometers for fans to make the leap. The joke, or maybe not entirely a joke for some, was that Cthulhu stirring in his sleep.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that basically cemented it in popular culture. The sound from the abyss must be something ancient and terrifying.
Absolutely. It became instant shorthand for deep-sea mystery and horror, and it didn't help that the location is also relatively near Point Nemo.
Point Nemo.
Yeah.
That's the most remote spot in the ocean, right? Farthest point from any land.
Exactly. The oceanic pole of inaccessibility. It's so remote, it's literally where space agencies intentionally deorbit old satellites and space stations. They crash them there because it's the safest place, least likely to hit anything or anyone.
So you've got this monstrous, unexplained sound coming from near the place where we dump dead spaceships.
Yeah, the narrative writes itself, doesn't it? It just adds layers of mystique. The bloop became synonymous with the creepy, unknown, crushing deep.
Okay, so that's the perfect storm of mystery, location, and pop culture. But behind the scenes, the scientists analyzing the data, they weren't quite buying the Cthulhu theory, presumably.
Presumably not, no. Even with all the media excitement, the internal scientific assessment was always much more cautious, much more skeptical about the biological source.
What was the biggest red flag for them, scientifically, against the giant creature idea?
The sheer power, we keep coming back to it, but it's fundamental. Christopher Fox himself, while acknowledging the sound had animal-like qualities in its structure, pointed this out early on. Making sounds takes energy, a lot of energy.
Right.
For even a blue whale, those massive calls are a significant energy expenditure. For something to produce a sound that much louder and sustain it for a whole minute as an infrasonic wave, the biological energy requirements are just staggering. It pushes the boundaries of known biology and physics regarding metabolism and sound production. The energy budget just didn't seem plausible for a living organism.
Okay, the energy cost was too high. What else?
Dr. Robert Ziak, who became a key voice in explaining this later, he really hammered home the importance of looking beyond that sped-up, audible bloop sound. He focused on the real-time spectrogram data.
The visual representation of the sound over time.
Exactly. And he pointed out how misleading that 16x speed-up could be.
So wait, it wasn't just making it shorter? It actually changed how it seemed.
In a perceptual sense, yes. Compressing it pushed the frequencies up into the audible range where our brains are wired to hear patterns, especially rising and falling tones, often as voices or calls. It sounded more biological when sped up. But Ziak stressed that the real-time spectrogram, the raw data, showed something different. It showed this incredibly low, steady, resonant rumble. Compare that to, say, an earthquake signature.
Which you said is usually a sharp, messy burst.
Right. Very chaotic, broadband energy. The bloop was the opposite. Low frequency, relatively narrow band, and sustained over that minute with that steady rise. That sustained, thunder-like quality felt much more consistent with something massive and physical, slowly fracturing or moving, like ice.
Okay, so the real-time signal looked more geological or maybe cryological.
Exactly, more like a massive physical event than a biological signal. And that rising frequency sweep, instead of thinking of it as vocal modulation, the scientists started thinking maybe that sweep represents a physical process unfolding, a change in the state of the source itself over that minute.
Like tension building and then releasing.
Sort of, yeah, like a huge structure under immense stress, and the sound is the noise of that stress releasing, not instantaneously like an explosion, but gradually, cumulatively, as a fracture propagates. That slow, steady change in the sound profile matched the idea of a massive, slow-motion structural failure much better than an animal call.
So internally, the monster theory was fading pretty early.
It was always considered extremely implausible internally. The required power, the spectral signature, it just didn't add up biologically. NOAA never seriously pursued it in their own analysis. The public fascination was really driven by the mystery and, crucially, by how the sound was presented in that sped-up format.
Okay, so the leading hypothesis among the researchers shifted towards something physical, likely ice-related, fairly early on. But they needed proof, right? They needed to show ice could make that specific sound that loud.
Absolutely, and that was the challenge. The Southern Ocean is incredibly noisy. You've got storms, waves, ships far away, marine life, and constant noise from ice rubbing, cracking, bumping, filtering out all that background noise to isolate specific rare events like the bloop, and then proving their origin. That took years.
How do they go about getting that proof?
They needed more data, and they needed it closer to the source. They needed to build a library of known ice sounds to compare against the bloop's signature. This meant deploying more hydrophones, specifically targeting the Antarctic region. That methodical, multi-year effort is what finally cracked the case. It transitioned from informed speculation to hard evidence in cryoseismology.
Okay, so this brings us to the solution. It wasn't a sudden discovery, but more like assembling pieces of a puzzle over several years. NOAA eventually came out with the official explanation, with the public really getting confirmation around 2D12 or so, based on all this accumulated data.
That's right, and the official finding. The bloop was generated by a massive ice quake.
Ice quake, so like an earthquake, but made of ice.
Essentially, yeah. It's a type of seismic event, meaning it releases energy that travels like earthquake waves, but it's non-tectonic. It's not caused by shifting plates. It's the sound, the powerful acoustic energy released when a really enormous iceberg cracks internally or breaks off calves from a glacier or an ice shelf in Antarctica.
And how did they prove that was the bloop source? What was the detective work?
It was pretty methodical. NOAA realized the existing hydrophone array, while great for the Pacific, wasn't ideally placed to listen closely to Antarctica. So between about 2005 and 2010, they strategically deployed additional hydrophones much further south.
Closer to the action.
Exactly. They put them in areas known for really dynamic ice activity places like the Drake Passage between South America and Antarctica, the Bransfield Strait near the Antarctic Peninsula, and the Ross Sea. They were basically going ice sound hunting.
Did it work? Did they find similar sounds?
Oh, yeah. Almost immediately, these new, closer hydrophones started picking up numerous, powerful, rumbling acoustic signals. And critically, many of these signals had a spectral profile, the frequency, the duration, the characteristics, that was a very close match, sometimes almost identical, to the original 1997 Bloop recording.
Ah, repeat occurrence.
Repeat occurrences, exactly. And because these new hydrophones were closer and better positioned, they could more accurately trace these bloop-like sounds back to specific regions known for major iceberg calving and movement. The documentation became clear. These sounds were definitely being generated by large icebergs cracking and fracturing.
Okay, but the original bloop was pinpointed way out at 50 south, 100 west. How did they connect that specific 1997 event back to Antarctica, thousands of kilometers south?
That's where arrival direction tracking came in. Using the original 1997 data from the multiple hydrophones that picked it up, they could analyze the precise angle the sound waves arrived from at each distant sensor. And the analysis consistently showed the signal always comes from the south. The directionality was unambiguous. It pointed directly towards Antarctica, likely originating from a major ice event somewhere in that active zone between the Bransfield Strait and the Ross Sea, maybe near Cape Adare, a huge glacier outflow point. The geography lined up perfectly with where they were now recording similar sounds.
And the sheer power needed finally made sense with ice.
Absolutely. Icequakes generated by these massive calving events are incredibly loud. We're talking about pieces of ice potentially kilometers long, weighing millions of tons, breaking apart. The stress released is enormous, creating acoustic waves, cryoseisms, easily powerful enough to travel those 5,000 kilometers through the SOFAR channel and still be detected clearly.
So Dr. Giac eventually stated,
His conclusion, once they had all this corroborating data, was definitive. He said the frequency and time duration characteristics of the original bloop signal were, and I quote, consistent and essentially identical to icequake signals we have recorded off Antarctica. Case closed, essentially.
wow, okay, but what about that specific feature, the 1-minute rising frequency sweep? How does that fit with a breaking iceberg? That still sounds kind of weird for ice.
It does initially, but it actually makes perfect physical sense. It's one of the coolest parts of the explanation, I think.
Okay.
So in an animal call, rising frequency might be, intentional modulation, communication. But in a giant fracturing piece of ice, it reflects the physics of the break itself.
How so?
Imagine this colossal iceberg under immense stress. As it starts to crack or as an ice sheet is grinding under pressure, it stores up mechanical energy. The sound starts as this very deep, low-frequency rumble that's the sound of the highest strain, the initial fracturing under massive load.
A deep rumble.
Then, as the fracture propagates, as the ice continues to break apart over that minute, the stress is relieved. As the structure fails, the nature of the vibration changes, and the dominant acoustic energy shifts slightly higher in frequency. So that sweep from low to slightly higher frequency over 60 seconds. It's the acoustic signature of the slow-motion, catastrophic failure of a massive block of ice. The speed, the duration, the frequency shift, it all matches the models of large-scale ice fracture mechanics.
So the bloop wasn't unique at all. It was just a really, really loud example of something common.
Pretty much. An unusually loud instance, yes. Maybe the iceberg was particularly large, or the fracture happened in just the right way, or the sound coupled perfectly into the SOFAR channel aimed right at the NOAA array. But fundamentally, it was the sound of Antarctic ice doing what Antarctic ice does, breaking apart.
Tens of thousands of these icequakes happen every year.
Yeah, the Southern Ocean is constantly rumbling and cracking with them as ice shelves calve and bergs drift and grind. The bloop just happened to be the one that got recorded so clearly, so far away, and caught everyone's imagination before we fully understood the acoustic power of the cryosphere. It was the sonic boom of a continent shedding ice.
Okay, so the bloop gets all the fame, mostly because of the monster story. But your point is, it wasn't alone. The hydrophones were picking up other weird stuff around the same time.
Exactly. To really appreciate how they solved the bloop, you need to see it as part of a family of related acoustic mysteries from the late 90s. The NOAA network was basically documenting this whole symphony of strange, powerful, low-frequency sounds coming from the south.
And these other sounds also ended up being ice-related.
All the famous ones from that era, yes. They all share that common cryogenic origin. It's worth quickly running through them because they show the different voices ice can have.
Okay, let's hear about the Doop siblings.
All right, first up, there's Julia. This one was recorded a bit later, March 1st, 1999. It was also really loud, but lasted even longer than the bloop, almost 3 minutes, nearly 2 minutes and 43 seconds.
And what did Julia sound like?
It was described as a kind of loud moaning or wailing sound. When they sped it up, it apparently sounded so eerie and voice-like, they gave it that female name, Julia.
So different from the bloop sweep, what made the moaning sound?
Julia wasn't really a frequency sweep. It was more of a sustained, very low frequency tone, but with these big fluctuations in volume, sort of waxing and waning.
Yeah.
The investigation pointed to a large iceberg aground as the most likely culprit.
Aground, like stuck on the seabed.
Exactly. Imagine a truly enormous iceberg, maybe kilometers across, drifting into shallower water and getting stuck on the continental shelf. The ocean currents are still pushing against this massive thing, causing it to vibrate, scrape against the seabed, maybe rock back and forth. That sustained friction and vibration generates that low, moaning acoustic energy.
Wow. Where did Julia come from?
Yep. Triangulation put it in that same active Antarctic region, somewhere between the Bransfield Strait and Cape Adare, known for lots of big icebergs moving around. So, yeah, Julia was probably the sound of an iceberg the size of a city grinding on the ocean floor.
That's arguably just as dramatic as a monster.
Okay, who else is in the family?
Next, let's talk about slowdown. This one was actually recorded before the bloop in May 1997, and the name tells you exactly what it did.
Slowed down.
Yeah, it was a really long sound event, 7 minutes, and over those 7 minutes, the dominant frequency slowly decreased, it slid downwards, and the volume also faded, a long descending tone.
7 minutes. Okay, what makes that kind of sound?
Slowdown was identified as the sound of ice, moving, but specifically slowing down due to friction. The most likely source is either a truly massive iceberg dragging its keel along the seafloor over a long distance.
Like putting on the brakes. Exactly. Or, potentially, it could even be the sound of a huge section of an ice sheet on land grinding and shifting slowly across the rock beneath it. That immense friction over a long period, gradually decreasing as motion slows, creates that descending frequency signature.
And is slowdown common?
Apparently, yes. NOAA noted that similar slowdown signals have been recorded multiple times a year, pretty much every year since '97. So it's a regular part of the Antarctic soundscape, confirming it's a natural ice process.
Okay, one more. You mentioned train.
Right. Train, also known as the sea train. This one came even earlier, March 1997, so just a couple of months before slowdown in the bloop.
Why train? Did it sound like a locomotive?
Kind of, yeah. It had this distinctive pattern where it started with a quick rise in frequency and then settled into this quasi-steady, continuous rumble at a stable pitch. People thought it sounded like a distant train chugging along.
And the cause? Let me guess. Ice.
You got it. The conclusion was also iceberg grounding. Probably another very large berg, this time maybe in the Ross Sea near Cape Adare, running firmly onto the seabed. That initial impact might cause the rising sound, and then the sustained contact and vibration as currents pushed against the grounded berg created that steady, chugging rumble.
Okay, so let's recap. Bloop, calving. Julia, a ground grinding. Slowdown, dragging friction. Train, grounding. All recorded between March 97 and March 99. All initially mysterious, all traced back to different types of massive ice events in Antarctica.
That's the key takeaway. This cluster of incredibly loud, weird sounds all coming from the same general region within a couple of years. That pattern was the ultimate confirmation. It showed these weren't isolated freaks of nature, but different acoustic manifestations of the incredibly dynamic and powerful processes happening in the Antarctic cryosphere. They were hearing the ice sheet in motion in various ways.
And realizing that these sounds are tied to ice breaking up, that connects directly to modern concerns, doesn't it?
It really does. That's the modern relevance of the whole Bloop story.
Yeah.
Glaciologists and climate scientists now use this understanding. The frequency and intensity of these ice quakes, the bloops, the Julias, the slowdowns, they can be seen as indicators.
Indicators of what?
Indicators of the rate of ice loss. As the climate warms, as ice shelves destabilize and shed icebergs more rapidly, we'd expect to hear more of these powerful acoustic events. So studying these sounds, which started as a mystery, has inadvertently given us another tool, another baseline, to monitor the health and dynamics of the Antarctic ice sheet in a changing climate.
So the science is settled. The bloop was an ice quake, a massive calving event. No sea monster, no Cthulhu stirring, just really big, really loud ice, which is in its own way pretty awe-inspiring.
Definitely.
But here's the thing. Even though it's solved, The bloop still fascinates people. It pops up all the time online, in documentaries, in fiction. It hasn't really gone away. So here's where it gets really interesting. Why does this solved mystery, the sound of breaking ice, still have such a powerful grip on our imagination?
I think it's a combination of things. Firstly, that original narrative was just perfect, wasn't it? The deep, dark ocean, the unknown, the hint of a monster. That primal fear and curiosity is hard to shake off even when you know the answer.
The monster story is just better than the ice story for some people.
It's certainly more dramatic in a Hollywood sense, and that nickname, the bloop, combined with the sped-up audio clip, is just inherently memorable and a bit spooky.
Yeah.
Plus, the sheer scale of sound crossing an ocean that retains its power.
And those geographical links probably help keep the mystique alive, too.
Oh, absolutely. The lingering Lovecraft association, however coincidental, just adds that layer of nerdy, cool, and cosmic dread. And the proximity to Point Nemo, the spaceship graveyard,
Right.
that just fuels modern interpretations. It taps into that feeling of the deep ocean as this vast, remote, slightly alien place. As someone joked, knowing it was ice means we can relax that at least our spaceship graveyard isn't also the hangout of some unknown giant kraken. But the fact we even had that thought shows how potent the original mystery was.
Okay, so the myth persists. But what about the science? Did solving the bloop have any lasting positive impact beyond just closing a case file?
Oh, hugely positive, actually. All that public fascination, even the slightly wild speculation, it drew massive attention to what NOAA was doing with underwater acoustics and ocean monitoring in general.
So NOAA could kind of leverage that interest.
They absolutely did. They didn't just shut down the conversation once they knew it was ice. They used the bloop story very effectively as an educational tool. That audio clip became one of their most requested, most downloaded files.
Right.
And they used the whole narrative, the mystery, the investigation, the different hypotheses, the eventual solution to illustrate the scientific method perfectly. Here's how science works. You observe something weird, you gather more data, you test ideas, you collaborate. And eventually, through perseverance and better technology, you can turn an anomaly into understanding. It's a fantastic case study in scientific inquiry.
That makes sense, turning mystery into a teaching moment.
And it went beyond just education. The knowledge gained from understanding the bloop and its siblings, like Julia and Slowdown, led to direct practical applications.
Like what?
Well, in 2008, scientists were tracking a really enormous iceberg designated A53A, which was breaking up near South Georgia Island, way out in the South Atlantic.
Okay.
They were able to use the acoustic signatures, the specific types of icequake sounds they now understood, thanks to the bloop investigation, to actually monitor the disintegration of A53A remotely using hydrophone data. They could hear it breaking apart, even when clouds or distance made satellite observation difficult.
Wow. So the bloop mystery directly led to a new way of tracking dangerous icebergs.
Essentially, yeah. It helped refine acoustic glaciology. The bloop went from being this spooky unknown on the unsolved mysteries list to becoming a foundational example in polar geophysics, a tool for understanding and monitoring large-scale ice dynamics. It's a great story of how pursuing a fundamental mystery, even one that seems a bit out there initially, can lead to really valuable scientific tools and insights.
It really bridges different fields too, doesn't it? Started with military tech, dipped into marine biology fantasy, and landed squarely in geology and climate science.
Exactly. The solution wasn't a terrifying creature from the abyss, but it was still the sound of something colossal and powerful. An Antarctic iceberg tearing itself apart, sending an echo across an entire ocean.
So what does this all mean when we boil it down?
I think the case of the bloop is ultimately a really clear win for careful science and critical thinking over just jumping to the most sensational explanation. It demonstrates beautifully that the true stories nature tells us, like the sheer acoustic force of the Earth's cryosphere breaking apart, can be just as stunning, just as mind-blowing as any myth we might invent. It reminds us to check the data, question the presentation like that sped-up audio, and keep listening.
And maybe as a final thought for you, our listeners, just take a second to really absorb that. The sheer, almost unimaginable power needed for a single chunk of breaking ice, thousands of kilometers away in Antarctica, to generate one of the loudest sounds humans have ever detected, right across the Pacific Ocean.
It really does put the power of natural forces into perspective.
It makes you wonder what other massive, maybe even mundane natural events are happening on our planet right now, generating sounds that we might still be misinterpreting. or maybe haven't even detected yet.
Yeah.
Definitely check out those NOAA recordings online if you get the chance, hearing that raw, low bloop rumble, knowing it's ice.
Right.
It's a powerful reminder of how much is still happening, unseen and unheard, in the deep.